Press statement from the DOS, the 5th of September, 2025. The hand behind the trigger. The Directorate of State of the Indigenous People of Biafra, the DOS, was never and is not under any illusion whatsoever about the powerful forces that have aligned themselves against the total freedom and emancipation of the Biafran people, from the contrived and imposed subjugation of our land and people, for the sole benefit of these powerful forces. We are also not oblivious of the fact that these forces will go to any length to maintain their stranglehold over our land, trusting in the enormous resources at their disposal and their control of information through their disparate disinformation outlets. However, what they seem to ignore is the fact that our hunger and thirst for freedom, the freedom of our land, the freedom of our children, the freedom of our generations yet unborn, and the dignity inherent in us as a people outweigh by a very long shot their selfish reasons for arraying and aligning their forces against us. The reason is simple. While they are motivated and driven by their greed to control our land and steal our resources, the Biafran people, on the other hand, are propelled by an innate instinct for survival. It is this survival instinct that brought together the army of volunteers called the Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB, whose commitment to the birthing of an idea for which its time has come is unwavering. The IPOB leadership need to take our people briefly down the memory lane. The state-sponsored, cold-blooded murder of the Biafran people began in the 1940s under the watch of the British, then the colonialists, who believe that they have a score to settle with the Biafran people for daring to resist their evil intentions of making us a country of subjects. Fast forward to the 1960 ES. Harold Wilson, a former British Prime Minister, encapsulated the policy of the British establishment, then during the British-instigated genocide, and its policy now with his infamous statement that the death of 500,000 Biafran children will have no bearing whatsoever to their continued supply of weapons of annihilation to the Nigerian government, their proxy, to use those weapons to do their dirty work for them. To put the above historical perspective into context of the present agitation, to reclaim our sovereignty being championed by the Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB, our people need to comprehend the fact that the British establishment sees IPOB as its greatest enemy in the mold of our great ancestors, the Ekumeku warriors, who waged an uncompromising battle against the invaders. This understanding will prepare us for the battle ahead, for us to be on the lookout for their proxies, whom they will use to infiltrate us and fight us from within. Some of these proxies, apart from the Nigerian government, include our very own politicians serving Nigeria in different capacities, answering senators, DRs, professors, engineers, the clergy, media outlets, international organizations, and foreign governments. It is this state of affairs that explains the flooding of our land and territory with all manner of forces, both state actors and non-state actors, to commit all manner of heinous crimes and abominations against our land and against our people, with the sole objective of turning the Biafran people against the only genuine, non-violent movement fighting to liberate our people from becoming a country of subjects of the British establishment. The most recent case in point in the conspiracy of the British establishment to disillusion, discourage, and demoralize Biafrans to repudiate their inalienable right to self-determination was the elevation by their media proxies of a man who openly claims to be a murderer and kidnapper of his people as being a member and a leader of the Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB. The Nigerian media and certain Western media houses, BBC, AP, DW, Facebook, etc., despite available and verifiable information to the contrary, have continued to associate Mr. Simon Ekpa with IPOB in order to achieve their preordained objective of discrediting and criminalizing our genuine and just demand for self-determination. How any sane and reasonable man on the street will believe the Nigerian government and the media's narrative that Simon Ekpa, an infiltrator whom former governor of Ebonyi State, David Umahi, attempted to bring into IPOB, who never spoke on our hallowed radio, Biafra, never belonged to any IPOB family, is now suddenly the leader of IPOB, beats my imagination. Thanks to our internal checks and balances, when he was brought to us, he failed our simple rule of admitting people into the IPOB global family. The trial and conviction of Mr. Simon Ekpa for terrorism offenses does not call for any form of celebration whatsoever. Rather, it should reinforce the resolve of all IPOB family members worldwide to be very vigilant and not to let our guards down, because his conviction is not the ultimate objective of those who recruited him. Their eyes are set on the destruction of our collective will to extricate ourselves from the debilitating and undignified position of country of subjects, which the British created Nigeria to be. In spite of the plethora of evidence in the public domain from 2021 to the present, when the leadership of the indigenous people of Biafra unequivocally communicated to media houses, the international community, and the Finnish government that Mr. Simon Ekpa never belonged to and does not belong to the Biafran self-determination movement called the Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB. The British government, the Nigerian government, and their media houses continue to associate him, his crimes against his own people, the crimes committed by other non-state actors and common criminals under the employ of the Nigerian state to IPOB, with the belief that if they continue to murder innocent Biafrans in cold blood and attribute these heinous crimes against humanity and abomination against the land to IPOB, Biafrans will reject IPOB and repudiate their right to self-determination. Biafrans must understand that the ultimate plan of the British working through Nigeria and all their other proxies is to designate IPOB a terror organization in the international arena and use that as a leverage to activate another genocidal war against Biafrans. This is the calculation of the hand behind the trigger. The Directorate of State of the Indigenous People of Biafra, DOS, since 2015 have communicated and visited the United Nations, the African Union, the African Human Rights Commission, the ECOWAS, the European Commission, the European Parliament. The DOS have written to all European countries where we have IPOB presence, the US, Canada, Australia, and other international organizations about the atrocities of the Nigerian government against innocent Biafrans. We have called rallies in these countries to inform these governments and raise awareness about the violations of the human rights of Biafran men, women, and children. These actions undertaken by the IPOB DOS are not the modus operandi of a terror movement, as the British and Nigeria are working so hard to make the world believe and, most importantly, convince our people to view us through that prism. The Directorate of State want to restate that the Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB, is a global movement with defined structures. It is a movement with identifiable institutions. IPOB is a self-determination movement guided by fundamental ideological principles with inbuilt checks and balances to prevent both members and agent provocateurs from hijacking and derailing or deviating from our core fundamental objective of a peaceful self-determination for the Biafran people. The DOS therefore want to use this medium to commend the global IPOB family for their resilience, their dedication to their respective duties, their devotion to our just cause for freedom, and enjoin them to remain steadfast, for victory shall be ours at the end of this battle. We commend our friends for their support and ask them not to relent in their support until we achieve our set objective of a free, independent, and sovereign Biafran nation. A nation of free people with the right to determine our social, cultural, political, economic, and developmental policy, and not a country of subjects to the British, the hand behind the trigger. The DOS will roll out with specific timeline our official statements and communication to organizations and governments that Mr. Simon Ekpa was never at any point in time a member of this noble movement, talk less of being among the ranks of the leaders of the Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB. Signed, Mazi Chika Edozium, Head of Directorate of State of the Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB.